new first-time homebuyer savings account. Today, I'm gonna go over all the information that Canadian homebuyers need in relation to this new investment account. One of the reasons this account is so incredibly hyped is because of how incredible the tax advantages are. You're getting both RRSP and TFSA benefits all in one and in a whole new account that doesn't contribute to either TFSA or RRSP. Today, we're just going to be looking at a few categories of pieces of information on the FHSA. Firstly, what is the account? Next, what are the yearly contributions and information around that? What are the actual tax benefits? How can you transfer between accounts? How can you actually use this to purchase a home? And then lastly, how long you can hold these. So let's jump right into the content here with what is an FHSA. At the most basic level, FHSA stands for First-Time Homebuyers Savings Account. And as the name suggests, it's intended to help Canadians save for their first-time home purchase. The name does say savings account, but it's really a registered investment account. So you're intended to use the account to hold investments and hopefully increase your savings in value over time, hence the investment. As well, I want to emphasize the word home in First-Time Homebuyer Savings Account. It does not say real property. So you could actually hold properties in your name so long as you haven't lived in any properties. Now you might ask, how could I own a property if it's not my home? Well, maybe you're a young investor and you have multiple income producing properties that you're renting out. As long as you've never actually lived in any properties as your principal residence, you can still own property and open a first-time home buyer savings account. You just can't have had a home before that you own. These accounts went live April 1st of 2023. I think I wasn't alone among people who thought maybe this was some kind of a cruel April Fool's joke with the increasing house prices, giving young home buyers some grain of hope. But April 1st came and went, and it is not an April Fool's joke. It's a real investment account. I have one. I'm holding Vanguard in it. We're all good to go. And I'm sorry for any of you non-Canadians watching. One requirement of this account is to actually be a Canadian resident. You don't have to be a Canadian citizen, but you do have to be a Canadian resident, and so there's some implications around that. So you could be here on school, on refugee status, or on a permanent work permit, or something of that nature, so long as you're classified as a resident for the Income Tax Act. Next up is the yearly contribution. So this is getting into a little bit more of the nitty-gritty of the account. So in general, this account is rolled out over several years. You're getting more and more contribution room into the account as time goes on. So each year, it increases by $8,000, up to a maximum of 5 years, or $40,000 total contributions into your FHSA. You can only carry forward $8,000 of unused contribution room. So for example, if you open an account in 2023 and don't put anything into it, you have that 2023 contribution room, and then into 2024, say January, February, you could drop 16,000 right in because you have 2023's room and 2024's room. However, if you didn't put any funds in that account in 2024, come 2025, you would have effectively lost out on that 2023 contribution room, and in 2025, you'd still only have 16,000. Another key point here is that you only start getting room once you open an account. So we're getting to the end of 2023 here. So if you have not opened one of these accounts and you're eligible, I would suggest getting it opened because you're gonna get contribution room, whereas if you just don't open an account, and the year rolls over to 2024, well, you just lost out on a year. So with the current $8,000 contribution limit, theoretically you could max this out by doing 2023, 24, 25, 26, and 27. So in 2027, theoretically, you could have $40,000 of principal contributed into this account. Let's get into some of the tax benefits of the FHSA. I mentioned earlier that you get both TFSA and RRSP benefits with this account. So I'm gonna break that down a little bit further here if you don't already understand how the tax benefits for those both work. So the tax benefits that are similar to an RRSP, any contributions to your first-time home buyer savings account effectively reduce your taxable income by the same amount. So effectively how this works is if your employer is taking off tax on each of your paychecks and you're putting money into your FHSA, you're actually paying too much tax because your employer is thinking you're making a certain amount, let's say 70,000, but if you contribute 8,000 to your FHSA over the year, you're actually only supposed to be taxed on 62,000. So that 8,000 difference in what you actually were taxed on that you shouldn't have been, you get that back when the tax credits come around. If you're in the marginal rate of about 30%, maxing out could get you about a $2,500 tax credit back. Not bad for money that's being invested towards a home that you might have to put away for savings anyway. And this is not where the tax benefits end. So much like a TFSA, you're holding these funds in your FHSA and they are going to grow tax-free. So what does that mean? So say you contribute $8,000 into your account and you hold that for a few years, and with interest, after a while, it's worth $9,000. That increase in value in $1,000, totally tax-free so long as you use it to buy a home. Otherwise, if you held that in an investment, that $1,000 would actually increase your taxable income and you'd end up having to pay tax on it. So not shabby at all. Now let's talk about transferring between accounts. This may be applicable if you've already been saving up for a home and you have a down payment saved in a checking account or an RRSP if you're going to use the first-time homebuyer incentive. So this might be important for you here. So you can transfer directly from an RRSP into an FHSA. The transfer does have to be direct. It can never come into your account. It would have to be within your financial institution, directly between accounts. But what happens when you transfer rate from an RRSP into an FHSA, you use up your FHSA contribution room, but you're not going to get a tax credit. That's because when you first put those funds into the RRSP, you got the tax credit then, so you can't double up on it. However, on the flip side, you don't get that RRSP contribution room back. Luckily, a lot of the same requirements for withdrawing are the same as for opening the account. So as long as nothing's material changed, you're probably still qualified to use it for a first-time home purchase. First big one, of course, you have to be a resident of Canada. Same implications here, not citizen, but definitely a resident. And you have to have a written document or written agreement to purchase a house or to build a house in the near future. And as far as near future goes, in order to actually transfer the funds from your FHSA to realtor brokerage as a deposit or something of that nature, you have to be able to prove that that real estate transaction where you're buying your home is going to close before October 1st of the year after you use it. So for example, right now it is, I guess, October 24th of 2023. So it would have to close before October 1st of 2024. Now that timeline will get a little bit shorter, near December, February, but just think probably within a year, you're gonna have to be able to close the deal. And that same rule of thumb for within a year, you actually have to move into the property as your principal residence. That means you gotta live in the house as your home within 1 year after purchasing it. So you can't use this to leverage investment accounts. You can't use this to leverage rental properties. You actually have to live there. Now, whether you want to live there, cash in as the first-time home buyer, and then move out once you've lived there for long enough, talk to your accountant about that, okay? All right, and now the final thing we'll talk about here today is how long can you actually hold this account? Well, it will take 5 years of contributions if you're maxing out the contributions to fully stock up this account with $40,000. And once you're there, you can hold it for up to 10 years before using it to buy a property or until you turn 71. So if you're 66 right now, then you might only have it for 5 years. But if you're a bit younger, you can think of it for about 15 years or 10 years once you've actually maxed out the contributions, which leads to some pretty fun and interesting calculations to see if you actually stretch this out over the whole period, how much of a down payment could you use? So again, theoretically, if you max it out in 2023, you could have $40,000 contributed on the first day of 2027. And assuming the historical rate adjusted for inflation for the S&P 500, we're gonna use about 7.2% here. In 2027, you would have just over 60,000 in the account, and you would still have 10 years to let that compound if you wanted to. So assuming the same rates in the S&P 500, if you just left it for 10 years, you would have a whopping $121,938 in that account, give or take, which is pretty crazy considering you actually only put in 40,000. And in a lot of places in Canada, that's gonna get you a long ways on a down payment, especially if you and your spouse both do that. You could potentially have about 240 grand just ready to go, tax-free, that's grown. Or if you live in somewhere less popular in Canada, that could realistically buy you a condo or a house, just full-on cash out of your FHSA in 15 years. So I'll be very interested to see if anyone does that. Who knows how long you'd want to do that for. You'd have to rent in the meantime. Still an option. I hope this video helps you understand the new FHSA account. And if you haven't opened one yet and you qualify, I would really suggest doing so just so you get your contribution limit rolling. Even if you don't plan to contribute much or anything at all in 2023, at least then you'll have the room in 2024 if you decide to. And if you enjoyed this video or got value from it, just drop a comment down below. I'd really like to hear what you liked and what you didn't like, and stay tuned for more content in the future. Thanks for watching.